Hello and welcome to Data Empowerment, making data and AI work for everyone. I'm Emma Thwaites from the Open Data Institute, and it's great to be your host today at this event, jointly created by the Data Empowerment Fund and the ODI. So what is data empowerment? Well, put simply, it's the way that people and communities around the world can have control over their societies, their economies, and their lives. Feeling empowered, using data to actively shape the world in the interests of everyone, is right at the heart of the ODI's mission too. And for the next few hours, we'll hear more about how people around the world are doing it. We've registered more than 600 people for this event, and we already have guests and speakers from all corners of the globe, from Aotearoa, New Zealand, to North America, Africa, Europe, and more. And in our first panel discussion, we'll shine a light on the often hidden human infrastructure of our digital world. In this session, we'll hear more about the human labour in data and supply chains, from the new jobs being created to the risk of worker abuse and the impact on mental health. We've also got some fantastic talks looking at something called counter data. Now, counter data can challenge dominant institutions and ideologies, and it can be used to advocate for change. We'll hear from a range of organisations that are supporting people all around the world in different ways, from helping Indigenous communities to record and share information while maintaining their data sovereignty, to challenging biases and stereotypes in education. Now, in a world of data-based decision-making, counter data has emerged as a way of communities having a voice when official data tells an incomplete story. And in our final panel today, we'll talk about what it takes to build and sustain data empowerment efforts for the long haul. Creating data systems that truly serve communities isn't a one-time effort. It requires ongoing commitment, resources, and hard work. We'll learn from successful models of collective data governance that are standing the test of time, building power through collaboration and shared purpose. And if you want to get involved today and ask questions for our guests, please drop them in the chat and we'll get through as many of those as we can. Colleagues from the ODI will be there and they'll pick up those questions and respond to comments and questions. But before we get to that, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome the Data Empowerment Fund's Jack Hardinges to tell us more about it and the diverse initiatives it supports. Welcome, Jack.
And the starting point, and I suppose the diagnosis of the fund, is that while data is constantly collected, shared, and used to make decisions that affect our lives, most of us have little say in how this actually happens. And where we do have a say, it doesn't always feel particularly meaningful. And that's important because asymmetries in data are asymmetries in power, economically, politically, socially. And so not having the rights, the opportunities, the tools, or the capacity to control or influence how data is used diminishes our agency in a very digitized world. And I'm sure many of us have seen more examples than we would have liked now of how biased or inaccurate or misrepresentative data with no mechanisms for input or correction from the people it relates to can create very harmful algorithms then deployed into critical areas of our lives like education and policing. And I suppose as a self-described data optimist, I'm also concerned that a lack of inclusion and empowerment around data also creates mistrust. And that mistrust will lead to missed collection and missed uses of data and ultimately diminish its potential to help us tackle some of the big challenges of our time. I also don't want us to fail to support important new approaches to data that emerge from the ground up, from communities, rather than top down by businesses or other institutions. Wikipedia, after all, remains our largest repository of human knowledge, and it's collaboratively maintained. So as a fund, we feel there's an urgent need for more experimentation in data empowerment, as well as a better understanding of how to do it well. Empowered by the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation and Media Network, we're here to support initiatives that really do enable greater individual or community control over data in the real world. And it's been a real pleasure over the last year or so to learn a lot about how this is happening. So we've engaged groups of workers organizing to understand and influence how algorithms affect their livelihoods. We've learned of communities building tools to assert their sovereignty over cultural knowledge. We've encountered citizens collecting data about their environment to advocate for environmental justice. And we've also seen artists seeking to control how their digital works are used under the spectre of AI. We've also learned much more about approaches to data empowerment, both with and around data. So we've seen initiatives that are collaboratively building new data sets from scratch, as well as work to collaboratively evaluate and address bias and other issues with existing data. We've come across technical protocols and new digital tools for enabling communities to shape or steer how data is used. And we've seen efforts to develop new legal and governance frameworks for making more pluralistic decisions about data. And as the Data Empowerment Fund, we don't advocate for a particular technical solution or approach. To us, data empowerment is a movement and one for dignity and self-determination in the digital age. So today, you'll hear directly from some of the really remarkable initiatives that we're proud to support, as well as some other folks that we've had the pleasure of meeting along the way. As Emma said, we'll begin by looking at the human involvement in data and thus AI supply chains, which emerged as a really prominent theme among the organizations we've been able to support. And what I hope the discussion will do will consider both the opportunities created by this type of data work, as well as the risks of harm to workers that it might also represent. And as I've learned more about over this past year, in a world where data is power, the production of counter data can be a really powerful mechanism for communities to raise their voice and to advocate for change around a particular issue. That has been one of the real pleasures of this year, actually, is to get to understand this concept through the organizations we're working with and how they're taking slightly different approaches for different causes. I was also keen for us to consider today the challenge of sustaining data empowerment over the long run. I'm personally very interested in the types of institutions and the nature of the capital we should look to sustain this type of activity, especially for approaches that wouldn't be viable if left to the market alone. But today, we hope isn't just about listening to inspiring stories. We also want it to be about community. So we're really cognizant of the brilliant work of other organizations and people in the field building more just and empowering data systems, and want to make sure that we as a fund are aware of and build on this work of others and amplify it too. So really urge you to contribute, to ask questions and follow up on connections. And thank you for being part of this really important conversation.